Hello and welcome to the demo for the SUSE OpenStack Cloud deployment UI. This is the UI that you can use after you've set up your deployer in your environment and before you've deployed the OpenStack services. This will guide you through some of the processes rather than having to go in and edit YAML files directly, though that option will remain available to you. First thing you're going to need to do is pick which model you want to deploy for your cloud. You can have some guidance here by using these drop-down boxes to identify which kind of hypervisor you want to use or what sort of network or the number of nodes. For this example, I'm going to use the mid-scale KVM model. I can see some information about that model over on the right-hand side. I'm going to pick next. It's going to warn me that any changes I have already made are going to be wiped out. That's fine, because I haven't made any changes yet. Here, if I want some information about the individual node types, I can see which services are typically deployed on each of these nodes. This may not be an exact match for your cloud configuration, but it should be fairly close. I can also, if I want to, edit the number of nodes in the model, though that is generally advised against. Following that, I'm going to get the full list of roles and how many nodes are supposed to be in each role. Here, by default, there's going to be some templates for each of these, and you can go in and modify these with your real server data if you want. Though more typically, you're going to either import a list of servers from CSV as per the docs, or add them manually here in the Add Server dialog. Alternately, if you have either HP OneView or SUSE Manager, you can go and discover the data and get the list of servers that your cloud environment or that your data center already knows about. And you can then drag and drop these to the various roles here. So for example, if I wanted to add my discovered server to the compute list, it shows up right here. I'm actually going to drag that back because this isn't a real deployment. The other thing I can do on this page is edit my subnet and net mask. If you need to deploy an OS onto the servers, you would specify that here. You could pick 1 or 0, 1 or all of the servers, and you would move those over to the selected server side if you want to deploy them or to provision a new OS on them. If you don't need to provision an OS on any, you can just select next. If you are provisioning them, you'll need to input a password here for what the default password is going to be for the user specified. Typically in a real environment, this user will be the Ardana user. It only says Jeremy because we're using my local machine. Hit the install button. It's going to warn me this is going to wipe out everything on those systems. I am aware of that, so I'm going to hit yes. Here I'm going to see a mock log of that's running at a greatly accelerated speed for the purposes of the demo, but I can see what is the typical output of a deployment or of a provisioning of the OS on one of my nodes. Once that's done, I'll carry forward to this summary page that will summarize all the choices I've made so far and provide me the opportunity to change some cloud configuration data, whether this is general things such as the NTP servers or the hostname prefix, or more specific stuff such as the NIC mappings, the server groups, the networks, interface models, or disk models. I can also edit any information about the servers here. For example, if I add a new server group or NIC mapping that is more appropriate for the server in question. Once that's complete, I have the opportunity to make direct changes to the YAML files and J2 files that are the raw configuration data for my cloud. For example, if I want to change the firewall rules, something that is not available elsewhere in the install UI, I can do that here by making some sort of change and then saving the file. I'll see an asterisk next to the file indicating that it's changed since the last time I validated. Also, I can modify the template files for the various services that are part of OpenStack in this the same fashion here. There are a few choices that are global around whether you want to wipe the data disk, use an encryption key, and what level of verbosity you want for the deployment. Before you can proceed from here, you have to run the config processor. I do that by clicking the validate button on the model tab. What this is going to do is it's going to run the back-end process, the configuration processor that interprets all of these files that we've just been modifying through the UI, either indirectly via the dialogues or directly by editing YAML files or J2 files here on this screen. The config processor is kind of pre-checking, looking for any syntax errors or anything that is obviously wrong. For example, having a server assigned to a role that doesn't exist, having an invalid format for IP address, something along those lines. It's not going to pre-find all possible errors, but this can go a long ways towards saving you time later in the actual deployment, catching some of that stuff up front. Since the validation succeeded, I'm going to hit the deploy button. And once again, we're going to see a greatly accelerated playthrough of this. As the various steps start, they turn black to indicate that that step has begun. If they are gray, that step is not started yet. And once they are finished, we get a green text with a check mark at the end. So this is just simply going through the various steps that are involved in deploying the cloud. Once that is complete, I'll be able to proceed to the final page where I get a summary saying which cloud model I deployed, and if I want to disable the service that's behind the installer GUI, because I'm not going to reinstall, the steps for how to do that will also be displayed right here. There's an Ansible playbook you can run. Additionally, on a real environment as opposed to my demo environment here, you will have links to the Horizon and Ops Console login screens from this dialog, as that's usually where you would want to go next to finish, continue configuring your cloud, perhaps by adding users, creating some VMs, or whatever it is you need to do next. This has been a summary of the Day Zero install UI, also the UI that you used to finish the deployment part of your cloud installation. Hope you have found this to be useful. Thank you very much.